Book of Heaven, Volume 19, Part 6. May 1st, 1926. How the one who lives in the divine will is nourished by the divine breath, while one who does not live in it is an intruder and an usurper of the goods of God, and receives them as alms. The divine will has a continuous motion that never stops. I felt all immersed in the supreme volition, and my sweet Jesus came out from within my interior, and squeezing me tightly to himself, he placed his mouth close to my lips and sent me his omnipotent breath. But who can say what I felt within me? That breath penetrated deep into my most intimate fibers. It filled me completely, to the point that I no longer felt my littleness, my existence, but only Jesus within all of me. Then, after repeating several times this act of sending me his breath, as it seemed he was not content if he did not see me completely filled with that divine breath, he told me, "My daughter, since you are born in my will, it is necessary, it is right and decorous that you live, grow, and be nourished in it, and that you acquire the prerogatives of a true daughter of my volition. No extraneous feature, nor anything that does not belong to my will must appear in you. Therefore, from your physiognomy, from your manners, from your speaking, and even from the way you love and pray, it must be recognized that you are the daughter of my will. Do you see, then, how I love you, and with what jealousy I keep you and nourish you? With my very breath, because only my breath can preserve, whole and permanent, the life of my will in the one who must live in my volition. And so, that breath, that with so much love I released from my bosom in the creation of man, to infuse in him my likeness, I continue to infuse in the soul who lives in my will, in order to form my true images and the great portents that I had established to form in creation, and for which all things were made. This is why I longed so much for the one who lives in my will, because she alone shall not leave me disappointed in the purpose of creation. She alone shall enjoy, by right, the things created by me, because since my will is one with hers, what is mine is hers, and by right she can say, "The heavens, the sun, the earth, and all the other things are mine. Therefore I want to enjoy them, also to give honor to that supreme will that created them, and that reigns in me." On the other hand, the soul in whom my will does not reign has no right, and if she enjoys them, she is an usurper, because they do not belong to her. She is an intruder in my goods, and because my goodness is great, I let her enjoy them as alms, but not by right. And this is why many times the elements unload themselves over man to his harm, because he has no right. And what is left for him of the things of the earth is the alms that the Creator sends to him. But the one who lives in my will is like a queen in the midst of creation, and I greatly delight in seeing her reign in the midst of my goods. After this I continued to pray, and my sweet Jesus came back, making himself seen with 2 fountains of light coming out of his most holy hands. One of them descended over my poor soul, and through a device that was formed in the hands of Jesus, while descending, it went up again. It seemed to be a continuous current that, while descending, ascended. Jesus was all delighted in the midst of these fountains of light, and was all attentive, so that one of them would remain all centralized in me. And then he said to me, "My daughter, this fountain of light that descends from my hands is my will that descends from heaven and makes its way into the soul in order to accomplish what it wants to do within her. This action of my will forms the other fountain of light that, through my hands, ascends again toward heaven to bring the fulfillment of my will from the creature to the eternal Creator. But while ascending, at the same time, it descends again, doubled, to continue its divine action in the creature. My will has a continuous motion. It never stops. If its motion could be stopped, which cannot be, life would cease for the whole creation, for the sun, for the starry heavens, for the plants, for the water, for the fire, for creatures. All of them would be reduced to nothing. Therefore, with its continuous motion, my will is life of each created thing. It binds everything. It is more than air, that with its breath makes all the things that came out of our hands breathe, develop, and vegetate. See, then, what an affront is given by creatures, because while my will is life of everything and center of all things, and without it, nothing and no good would exist, they do not want to recognize its dominion, nor its life that flows within them. This is why the one who recognizes the life of my will within herself and in all things is the triumph of our will and the conquest of our victories. She is the recompense of our love to our continuous motion. Our will binds this creature to the whole creation, making her do all the good that my will itself does. So everything is hers, and I love her so much that I am unable to do anything without her, because by virtue of my will, we have the same life, the same love, one single heartbeat, and one single breath. And while saying this, he threw himself into my arms, as though faint with love, and he disappeared. May 3rd, 1926. How only in the divine will is prayer universal. How the divine will, bilocating, reigns in the soul as in its own dwelling. The divine will holds supremacy over the divine being and is the ruler of all the divine attributes. I was about to fuse myself in the holy divine volition according to my usual way, and I said, Supreme Majesty, I come in the name of all, from the first to the last man who shall exist on earth, to give you all the homages, the adorations, the praises, the love that each creature owes you, and to make all reparations for all and for each sin. Now, while I was saying this, my lovable Jesus moved in my interior and told me, My daughter, this way of praying is only of my will, because it alone can say, I come in the name of all before the Supreme Majesty. In fact, with its all-seeingness and immensity, it sees everything and embraces everyone. So it can say, not as a manner of speaking, but in reality, I come in the name of all, to do for you all that the creatures owe you. No human will can say, in reality, I come in the name of all. This is the sign that my will reigns in you. While he was saying this, my Jesus continued to pray in a loud voice. I followed him, and together we found ourselves before the Supreme Majesty. Oh, how beautiful it was to pray with Jesus. All things were invested by his words and acts. And since his will was everywhere and in each created thing, one could hear his creative words, his adorations, and everything he was doing being repeated everywhere. I felt myself becoming even smaller, being together with Jesus. I was all amazed, and he added, My daughter, do not be surprised. It is my will that bilocating, while reigning in God, reigns in the soul at the same time. And with its divine ways, it prays, loves, and operates within her. So it is impossible for us not to enjoy, not to love, not to listen to our will bilocated in the creature. On the contrary, it alone brings to us, as if on its lap, our joy, happiness, and love that overflowed from our womb in our work ad extra, the creation. It repeats the feast for us. It renews in us the joy we felt in creating so many beautiful things worthy of us. How not to love the one who gives us the occasion to bilocate our will, by letting it reign within herself, to give us divine love, adoration, and glory. Therefore, the living in my will is the prodigy of prodigies, because everything is in the will, both for God and for the creature. How many things we could do, but because we do not want them, we do not do them. When we want something, we are all love, all power, all eyes, hands, and feet. In sum, all of our being is centralized in that act that our will wants to do. On the other hand, if our will does not want it, none of our attributes moves. It seems they have no life for anything that our will does not want to do. So, our will holds supremacy, dominion over our being, and it is the ruler of all our attributes. This is why the greatest thing we could give to the creature was our will, and in it we centralized our whole being. Could there be a love more intense, a miracle more sensational than this? Even more, as much as we can give to the creature, it seems nothing to us compared to giving her our will, reigning and dominating in her. In fact, the other things we can give her are the fruits of our works, of our dominions. While by giving her our will, it is not fruits, but our very life and our very dominions. What has more value, the fruits or the life? Certainly the life, because by giving the life of our will, with it we give the font of all our goods. And the one who possesses the font of goods does not need the fruits. Even if the creature gave us everything, or made the greatest sacrifices, but did not give us her little will in order to let ours reign, she would still give us nothing. Even more, when things are not produced by our will, as great as they might be, we look at them as extraneous to us, as things that do not belong to us. I was thinking of what Jesus had told me, and I said to myself, is all this possible? That the divine will reaches the point of bilocating in order to reign in the creature as in its own dwelling, in its divine womb? And Jesus added, "My daughter, do you know how this happens? Imagine a little and poor hovel in which a king, taken by love for it, wants to reside. So the voice of the king can be heard coming from within that hovel. From it come his commands, as well as his works. Inside of the hovel there are foods apt to nourish the king, and the chair worthy of him on which he can sit. So the king has changed nothing of that which befits his royal person. He has only changed his residence. From the royal palace, of his own will, and with greatest delight, he has chosen the hovel. The little hovel is the soul. The king is my will. How many times do I not hear the voice of my will that prays, speaks, teaches in the little hovel of your soul? How many times do I not see my works come out of it, and I rule, vivify, and preserve all created things from your little hovel? My will does not take into account your littleness. On the contrary, it likes it greatly. What it looks for is absolute dominion, because through absolute dominion, it can do whatever it wants and place whatever it likes. May 6, 1926. How the ones who live in the divine will are the first in the eyes of God and form his crown. The divine will unites all who live in it and the acts done in it as one single act. The origin of the one who lives in it is eternal. I was fusing myself in the holy divine volition according to my usual way, and I prayed the celestial Mama to be with me and to give me her hand, so that guided by her, I might requite my God with all the love, the adoration, and the glory that everyone owes him. Now, while I was saying this, my beloved Jesus moved in my interior and told me, "My daughter, you must know that the first before the Supreme Majesty are those who have lived in my volition and who have never gone out of my will." My Mama came to the world after 4,000 years, yet in the eyes of God, she came before Adam. Her acts, her love, are in the first order of creatures. Therefore her acts come before all the acts of creatures, because she was the closest to God, bound to him with the tightest bonds of sanctity, of union, and of likeness. By living in our will, her acts became inseparable from ours. And being inseparable, these acts are the closest, as something natural to her Creator. Before and after do not exist in our will, but everything is first act. Therefore the one who lives in our will, even if she came as last, comes always before everything. So it is not the era in which souls come out to the light of time that shall be considered, but whether the life of my will has been in them as center of life, reigning and dominating in all of their acts, just as it reigns and dominates in the womb of the divinity. These shall be the first. Their acts done in our will shall rise above all the acts of the other creatures, and all shall remain behind. Therefore, these souls shall be our crown. See, as you were calling my Mama in my will to give me return of love, of adoration, and of glory, my will united the two of you together, and the love, the glory, the adoration, that the sovereign queen did have become your acts, and yours have become those of my mamma. My will placed everything in common. The one has become inseparable from the other. And I heard in you the voice of my mamma, her love, her adoration, her glory. And in my mamma, I heard your voice, loving me, adoring me, glorifying me. How happy I felt in finding and hearing the mamma in the daughter, and the daughter in the mamma. My will unites everyone and everything. It would not be true living in my will, nor a work of my will, if it did not centralize everything that belongs to it, and all of its eternal works, in the soul who lives in it, in whom it has its kingdom and dominion. If it were not so, the kingdom of my will would be a divided kingdom. That cannot be, because my will unites all its works together and makes of them one single act. And even though it is said that it creates, it redeems, it sanctifies, and so on, these are the effects of that single act that never changes its action. Therefore, the origin of the one who lives in my will is eternal, inseparable from her Creator, and from all those in whom my will has had its kingdom and its dominion. You have reached the end of the Book of Heaven, Volume 19, Part 6. Fiat.